Hello and welcome to the Schola Progenium. Today we'll be discussing everything you need to know to make Mephiston an unstoppable killing machine on your battlefields in the 40k universe. So, as usual, we'll be discussing this video in 3 sections, which will be broken down into smaller subsections as we go. So, first of all we'll be discussing what he does. Then we'll be discussing his loadout, including weapons, psychic powers and his warlord trait. And finally we'll be discussing how to use him, including what units you should be combining him with, how to deliver him reliably into the enemy lines, and a variety of other more specific tactics that you can use on the battlefield to win more games of 40k. So without further ado, what does Mephiston do? Well, first of all, Mephiston, within reason, can have a good go at killing anything. Especially enemy characters. Now, Mephiston's profile gives him the ability to hit on 2s. He has a toughness of 5, a strength of 5, he's got 5 wounds, and he's got a 2-up save. So, you know, as you can see here, he is really good at hitting stuff, because strength 5 with his weapon, the sanguine sword, which is effectively a power fist without the -1 to hit, which is really good, makes him strength 10, and because he is a Blood Angel infantry unit, he is wounding on +1 in close combat, which means that any unit of toughness 10 or below, he is wounding on 2s. That is incredible. Because he's toughness 5 with a 2-up armor save, he doesn't have an invuln save. That's one of his disadvantages. He doesn't have like a 4-up invuln save like most Space Marine and Blood Angels characters. But because of his 2-up save, when he gets shot by stuff up to and including last cannons, that's AP -3, plasma, that kind of thing, he still effectively has a 5-up invuln save anyway, which is the equivalent to Terminator armor in many ways. Obviously he does suffer from certain weapons, you know, melters and fusion guns, that kind of thing, can take him down to a 6-up save. But then when he fails that save, he then has the ability Lord of Death. Roll a d6 each time Chief Librarian Mephiston loses a wound. On a 5-up, the wound is ignored and has no effect. So against mortal wounds, if he's right in the thick of it, which he will be, taking on, you know, enemy psychers, he's going to get a 5-up, and also just against all the shots that the enemy is going to be putting into Mephiston, he is going to be getting a 5-up invuln on all the damage done to him, all the wounds that go through, which is really good. It keeps him on the field for ages. If you've ever played against Death Guard, you know how tough a Death Guard character with a 5-up feel no pain is, and you know the pain of having to deal with that 5-up feel no pain. So, you know, on Mephiston it is really good, keeps him in the game a long time. So he's smashing enemy units apart because he's got his weapons and his strength 5, and he's a Blood Angel, and he's hitting on 2s, so he's hitting on 2s, wounds on 2s. He's also got a movement of 7, which that extra inch makes a big difference, and when combined with psychic powers such as Wings of Sanguinius, can get Mephiston moving just all across the battlefield, just jumping from juicy target to juicy target, destroying stuff, tearing the enemy apart. It's really a sight to behold. So, well, first of all, we've discussed that he will kill anything within reason. Now, we've also discussed his ability to absorb firepower, and I'll go into that into a bit more detail now. So, when you're attacking with Mephiston, you'll often be, or always be, attacking simultaneously with multiple units. And you might have your Termes on there, you might have a Dreadnought in there, Sanguinary Guard, Death Company, a variety of assault units. And your opponent, you know, you want to put them in the position when playing Blood Angels where they can't effectively deal with all of the units that are hitting them. You know, they are going to still have to take another assault your turn to come after they've shot and assaulted you. You need to hit them with that massive sort of assault simultaneously. That's just a standard Blood Angel tactic or assault army tactic, and Mephiston ties in beautifully with this tactic because his toughness and his ability to absorb wounds, and the fact that he's a character, which means that he can't always be targeted, means that your opponent will be psychologically, focusing on him, thinking, how can I get Mephiston? And they'll be trying to get their, good damaging weapons into line to hit Mephiston, and you can sort of position Mephiston during your assault so that he is partially exposed but also partially protected by some units, because what this forces your opponents to do is split the fire between, say, a unit of Sanguinary Guard and Mephiston and, let's say, a Dreadnought that have all dropped out of a Storm Raven, a tactic we'll discuss later. And because he can only be shot by a few units that are guaranteed to do him damage, or the opponent thinks, yeah, these are the units I need to shoot at him that'll give me the best chance of getting rid of him, they will shoot those units at Mephiston. But because of his 5-up, feel no pain, and because of his 2-up armor save, which gives him most of the time a 5-up armor save at worst against plasma last, that kind of thing, he will probably not die, and they will have split off quite a chunk of their firepower. So then when they shoot the remaining units that can't target him because he's a character at your other assault units, they probably also won't die, and your opponent will have weakened a lot of your forces but not destroyed them, and take effectively another high-powered multi-unit, multi-charge assault in your next turn. So he really, with that ability to absorb firepower, with the fact that he's a character, if you can be clever with your positioning of units and you practice with Mephiston and give him a good go, you will find that you can really split up the opponent's firepower. And you can watch battle reports that I've used Mephiston in 8th edition. There's a lot of battle reports where I've featured on the channel Mordian Glory, and in those battles, sometimes you'll see even in the comment section, like, how did Mephiston not die and that kind of thing. But if you go back and watch those battle reports, you'll see how I've forced my opponent to split his firepower between Mephiston and other units, and how in other cases, he's not targeted Mephiston as much as he would need to kill him. And if you don't finish Mephiston off, he's going to come at you for another turn. He's probably going to wipe out another unit and do what he wants to do. So that combination of ridiculous killing ability and toughness, and the fact that he's a character, just makes him really, really useful and a really viable target on really viable unit on the battlefield, really flexible. Now, one of the sort of benefits of him is that he's also a psyker, and as a psyker he can take 3 psychic powers. 3 psychic powers is really, really good. I think he is the most powerful psyker, or he's one of the most powerful psykers in the Imperium, and he is the most powerful psyker for the Blood Angels. And he can also attempt to manifest 2 psychic powers a turn, which is pretty standard. That's fair enough. He knows 3. Which gives him flexibility, and he can manifest 2. And also, obviously, he's going to know Smite, so he knows 4 psychic powers in total. That gives him a massive amount of flexibility, and brings a lot of flexibility to your overall assault when you're hitting the enemy lines, because you can spread those powers around or focus them on him as you see fit, depending on what targets are available to the units that you have available to you. So really adds a lot of variety and a lot of flexibility to himself and all of his units, with all units around him with those 4 psychic powers. And not only that, but the big clincher here, the really good thing in my eyes, is the fact that he can attempt to deny not 1 but 2 enemy psychic powers. So because he's going to be right in the thick of it, if your opponent isn't a heavy psyker list, if he takes a psyker or 2, just to make sure he's got a bit of psychic protection, and being able to deal that smite here or there, which is very common. A lot of people just take a little bit of psychic support. It's you kind of need a little bit of psychic support on any list. Mephiston will probably overwhelm the enemy psychic. He'll be casting more powers, he'll be denying more powers, and he'll have more powers available to him. So in those situations, he's really dominating the psychic phase. And against, lists that have more psychic powers, yeah, he will be a little overwhelmed if he's on his own, but he can hold his own. He can still get a psychic power out of turn usually, with clever placement. And if you're killing off the enemy psychers with Mephiston, which is a tactic I'll discuss later, you can quickly combine his psychic powers with his killing ability to win the psychic battle in your 40k games. So I'll discuss the psychic powers that he should be taking in more detail now, and then we'll go on to his loadout that he has in a little more detail, and his warlord trait. So, psychic powers and Mephiston. Well, first of all, the number one psychic power for Mephiston is also number one in the sanguinary discipline, and that is quickening. Now, Mephiston comes with a base value of 4 attacks, and of course he moves 7 inches as already discussed. Now with the quickening, it's a warp value of 7, and it allows him to add 3 to advance and charge rolls he makes, which gives him that extra boost to his charge, and he can make D3 additional attacks in the fight phase until the start of your next psychic phase. Now that's significant because what that means is that he's effectively, gonna usually get an extra 2 attacks twice, because he'll be fighting in the enemy's enemy's attack phase as well, because the enemy will either shoot him up and then try and finish him off in the charge with a decent one of their characters, or Mephiston, if he doesn't finish something off in his attack, he'll get to attack again in the enemy's turn. So you're going to be getting, maybe 4 extra attacks out of Mephiston, effectively a full extra round of attacking, and if you roll lucky, you could be getting up to 6 extra attacks with Mephiston over the course of the turn until your next psychic phase, which, when he's hitting on 2s, wounding anything on 2s, he's doing D3 damage per wound that goes through. He's, really going to be stacking some damage on the enemy, whatever model or unit he's fighting against. So, with the quickening, that is just an auto-include. You just take the quickening. It is incredible. It can give, with a bit of luck, Mephiston 7 attacks just from casting 1 psychic power. Then number 2, and probably number 2 to select as well, kind of easy to keep track of because they're in order of awesomeness, is Unleash Rage. Now this is a warp charge value of 6, which is slightly less. And if manifested, select a friendly Blood Angels unit within 12 inches of the cycle, and that of course can include Mephiston himself. And until the start of the next psychic phase, add 1 to the attack characteristics of this unit. Now, this you're going to use in sort of 2 different contexts basically, and it's one that I always take, because even though it's only 1 extra attack, Mephiston on 4 attacks is good, but I usually charge, position Mephiston and get him ready to charge into stuff where he'll need more than 4 attacks to kill it. I want to amp him up a level and get him on 5 or more attacks. So if I don't get the quickening off, if my opponent goes, I don't want Mephiston to have the quickening, and they dedicate, a dispel, or I can't remember what you call it in 40k because I play a lot of fantasy as well, a dispel roll to the quickening, then you still want to be able to give him that extra attack. So that's useful, and it's also useful when you're dropping him in with other units. Say if you drop him in with the unit Sanguinary Guard, which I'll definitely recommend and explain in more detail later, all of them will be getting an extra attack. So that's 5 extra attacks from a full unit of Sanguinary Guard, potentially 10 if you had 10 who deep striking in. And if there's a Dreadnought in there as well, and the Dreadnought's taking on, often you find in 8th edition that your Dreadnoughts are against opponents where they're just not quite going to kill them. They could do with that 1 extra attack. And I often find that I'm really glad I've got Mephiston there with Unleash Rage. Mephiston's, he's handling himself, my other assault units are handling themselves, but my Dreadnought, it's a bit shaky. He's taking on another Dreadnought, or he's taking on a variety of other units where he might get killed or might not quite finish his, his target off. Give him an extra attack and help him do his job. So those are going to be sort of 2 contexts, or 2 to 3 contexts that you'll use Unleash Rage, and really useful, flexible power. Now the next one is Shield of Sanguinius. It has a warp charge value of 6, so still easy to cast. A friendly Blood Angels unit within 12 of the Psyker gets a 5-up invuln save until your next Psychic phase. So that's going to come into play, in your opponent's Psychic phase. It's going to come into play against their shooting, their assault phase, and your assault phase too. So it's going to, you're going to get the opportunity on the units that you're casting that on to sort of make the most of that Psychic power. It's going to come up a lot because you're going to be rolling a lot of those 5-up invuln saves probably on those units that you're casting it on. So it's sort of a cheap Psychic power that you will get a lot of use out of if you cast it. And you will cast it in one or two ways. Now, you'll either cast it on Mephiston because he's fighting against someone that can easily hit him with a weapon that is has a better AP than -3, because he's got a 2-up armor anyway. If the opponent's only going to be hitting him with -3 AP weapons, do not cast this on Mephiston. It's a total waste of time because his 2-up armor save will just go to a 5-up armor save anyway. And, that is a mistake you can make when you're first trying out Mephiston, so just don't waste your time. Take it from me. But if he's in threat from units that are better than AP -3, that's sort of the point where Mephiston is at risk on the battlefield, so you want to cast that on him. Or cast it on your Sanguinary Guard, because the big disadvantage of Sanguinary Guard is that they don't have an invuln save, and that is one of the reasons why often I take Terminators over Sanguinary Guard, is because I like to have an invuln save. I like my heavy hitting units to stay on the battlefield and keep heavy hitting, keep on doing that heavy hitting. And without an invuln save, those units will get focused down and killed quite quickly. So that invuln save 5-up on your Sanguinary Guard can be really useful. But again, because they have a 2-up armor save, if they're only going to get shot up by weapons that are AP -3 or not as good as that, then again, it's a waste of time. So the reason why I don't often take Shield of Sanguinius is because I don't often face opponents that have such a weight of -4 AP and better firepower in such availability that it's worth me casting that Psychic power. If they do, it's invaluable, but 99% of the time they don't, and it's just not worth my time because my Sangard are going to have a 2-up going up to a 5-up with AP -3, and so will Mephiston. So probably one to skip. Looks good on the surface, actually very useless a lot of the time. Now next is Blood Boil. Now I love a Blood Boil. I'm just going to read you the fluff here. The librarian drives his enemy's lifeblood into a seething frenzy, causing it to boil in the victim's veins a split second before bursting from every pore with explosive finality. He's popping heads. Now, we all love a good Blood Boil. As a warp charge value of 6, if manifested, select a visible enemy unit within 6 inches of the Psyker and roll 2d6. If the total exceeds the highest toughness characteristic in the target unit, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Now, basically against anything that's toughness 7 or less, you're going to get that because your average roll on 2d6 is going to be 7, usually. So, toughness 6 and below, you're almost guaranteed to get that off. Toughness 7 is a good punt, and with a bit of luck, you can go higher, toughness is. So, usually you're going to get that roll. That roll, it looks like an extra barrier, but it's not really. The unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. If the total rolled is more than double that of the highest toughness characteristic, the unit suffers 3 mortal wounds instead. So against Eldar and Guardsmen especially, and other armies where the characters are going to be toughness 3, you're almost guaranteed to get a flat 3 mortal wounds, which makes this, makes Smite look like a Power Fist and Blood Boil look like a Thunderhammer would be my best comparison. Because your Smite, you're only getting a D3, but with this, against characters that are toughness 3, you are almost guaranteed, if you get this off on a warp charge value of 6, 3 mortal wounds. Now you have to be up close. Now Blood Boil doesn't get selected that much because most of your you'll often overlook Blood Boil because you've got other really useful psychic powers in the Sanguinary Discipline. It's a really solid discipline that's really useful with the way the Blood Angels play. It really ties in nicely and synergizes. But often you'll only be able to pick 2 psychic powers and you'll be going for Quickening, Unleash Rage, Wings of Sanguinius, that kind of thing. So Blood Boil will be overlooked, but as I mentioned earlier, Mephiston can select 3 powers from the Sanguinary Discipline plus Smite, and because he's always in the thick of it, he is going to be within 6 inches, so he'll be able to target this because it's a very short range spell. It's an extremely powerful spell that can almost guarantee you 3 mortal wounds on an enemy character, a lot of enemy characters. But you've got to be within 6 inches, so it's easy to cast because it's a high risk, high reward. But Mephiston is going to be in the thick of it, and he's going to be doing that anyway. And it's really, really nice if you drop Mephiston in, run him up to a nearby enemy character, smite him, then Blood Boil them, then charge in and finish them off. You will almost definitely kill anything. That is an absolutely, a psychic barrage followed by a flurry of high strength, high damage attacks is just going to blitz apart most characters in the 40k universe. So I'm a massive fan of Blood Boil, and the other thing is that you can't stop Mephiston from targeting. The enemy can't stop Mephiston from targeting the characters, apart from blocking your roll by dispelling it with a higher roll with one of their psychers. Mephiston is going to get this off because you can target any unit within 6 inches, so not the nearest unit. So in many ways this is way better than Smite, but it's just a lot shorter range. But that is not a disadvantage to Mephiston. I am very passionately excited about Blood Boil combined with Mephiston, I have to say. Now, next, number 5 is the Bloodlance. Now, I'm not a massive fan of the Bloodlance because it is just way too situational. Has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, select an enemy model within 12 inches and draw a line between them and the Psyker. Roll a d6 for each model the centre of the line passes over, and for each roll of 5 up, that model's unit suffers a mortal wound. Now, really, the only time you're going to get a lot of hits is with, if you're casting this through like a unit with a lot of models, and they're usually going to be quite cheap, aren't they, if you think about like horde units or like massed units of infantry. Now, this can be quite nice against, say, a unit of Gene Stealers. You've got a unit of Gene Stealers in your face, maybe playing against Gene Stealer Cult, and they've they've brought in this unit of Gene Stealers nearby you, near Mephiston, to counter assault you, and you can just pick the furthest Gene Stealer away, hit like 5 or 6 in a line and kill maybe 2 off. But it's only a 5 up to get that mortal wound. So you really struggle in 12 inches to really draw a line over maybe more than 10 models. And on a 5 up to get a mortal wound, that means you're only really ever going to be doing 3 wounds with this. And to get those 10 models, you're generally not going to be going to cast this against the units that you really want to attack. So you'll be having to make this choice between, do I cast my Bloodlance at through this big block of infantry, because then I can maximise the amount of dice I'm rolling and try and get a lot of 5 ups and really do a lot of mortal wounds and kill 3 or 4 models, or do I cast it through this unit that I actually want to kill, that's really high value and dangerous to my assault as a counter assault unit or something like that, but I'm only going to be rolling 2-3 dice, probably not get a 5 up, maybe not even do even a single mortal wound, and I've spent one of my psychic powers on it, and I've not buffed any of my other units or made Mephiston better or toughened anything. Overall the Bloodlance is just, in my eyes, it's not even, I was going to say way too situational, but it's not even situational. Any situation that I can comprehend in 40k, I would just not choose the Bloodlance over any other psychic power in the Sanguinary Discipline. But comment down below, because I would love to know how to use, if you can tell me how to use the Bloodlance effectively, I would love to know it. And please do share it with the community, the wider community. So finally, you've got the Wings of Sanguinius. Now, Wings of Sanguinius has a warp charge value of 5. It's nothing. You can get that off, on 1 dice if that was allowed. It's great. If manifested, the Psyker can immediately move as if it were your movement phase. But his move characteristic is also increased to 12, and he gains the fly keyword until the start of your next psychic phase, which means in his next movement phase, he will move 12. This is the amazing thing about Wings of Sanguinius. I can't believe it's Warp Charge 5. It's almost as if Games Workshop forgot that you'd be able to use this power again in your movement phase. It's almost like they forgot that, and they just saw it in their playtesting as a 12-inch jump to guarantee a charge, and they thought, yeah, 12-inch jump to guarantee a charge, and a fall back and shoot if you want to, because you've got fly. That's pretty good. We'll make it 5. A warp charge value of 5. But the fact that in your next turn you will then move 12 inches and be able to fly, so you can move up levels, down levels, over terrain, massive amounts of flexibility to jump Mephiston wherever the hell you want. It's just incredible. Out of the 3 psychic powers that you're going to pick, you're going to take Quickening, and you don't always have to take Wings of Sanguinius. If you play against an army where Mephiston's going to burn bright and burn out fast, and he'll get a couple of turns out of him and then he'll die, maybe don't use Wings of Sanguinius, because you won't need to jump him around the battlefield that much. And if you're dropping him off in a Storm Raven, but if you're not dropping him off in a Storm Raven, and you're playing the long game with Mephiston and you want to get the most juice out of him, then Wings of Sanguinius is absolutely invaluable, especially in the late game, because wherever Mephiston is, if you can cast Wings of Sanguinius and Quickening and Unleash Rage on Mephiston, then he is going to be getting potentially, let's say you get your average rolls across the board, so you get 2 extra attacks from Quickening, 1 extra attack from Unleash Rage. So you're on 8 attacks, sorry. 7 attacks, because he starts with a base of 4. I'm getting confused now and I use them all the time. Base attacks of 4, of course, same as Captain. Don't know why I got confused for a second then. He's got his base attacks of 4. You've given him +2 from Quickening on average, +1 from Unleash Rage, takes him up to 7 attacks. He has extra 3 to his charge rolls, which means that you'll get an average of 7, +3, 10. You can, because of Wings of Sanguinius, move him 12 inches into position from wherever you were, and you can also have a movement of 12 inches in the next turn once you've destroyed whatever you're going to destroy in this assault phase. And Wings of Sanguinius, the final caveat, in addition, whilst this power is in effect, you can re-roll failed charge rolls for the Psyker. So effectively you have a almost guaranteed 22-inch range threat bubble on Mephiston. And even if you don't get off Quickening, even if you don't get off Unleash Rage, even if you just get off Wings of Sanguinius, and that's the only power you can get off with Mephiston that turn, that still gives him, you can still have a good punt at most stuff even if he's not been buffed, and he will have a threat range of 22 inches, because he will move 12 inches, and then he will have a re-roll, or he will then have a guaranteed threat range of 19 inches with Wings of Sanguinius, because you will have a 12-inch move, an almost guaranteed charge of 7 inches on 2d6, and you're re-rolling it, so it's just, you're going to get it off. So, and he's jumping wherever you want. That's just incredible, absolutely incredible. And because he usually kills what he kills in one round of combat, he's probably not tied into combat. And, later on in the game, you'll have probably hacked your way through most of the units that can kill Mephiston off. So Mephiston's going to be threatened by, long range firepower and, killy characters. And if you can, be clever and kill off the enemy's killy characters and win the artillery duel against their, high damage, long range firepower, in the late game they're basically not going to be able to take care of Mephiston, and he will just jump around with Wings of Sanguinius, just killing 3-4 man, units of elite infantry in one blow that are, hold an objective, jump off 12 inches, your units can take that objective, go clear another objective, you can just hop around, you can clear turn 5, turn 6, you can just clear an objective and you move your models on, but I'll discuss all those tactics later. So that is in detail everything you can do with the psychic powers, and there's a lot there to think about, because Mephiston is he is a killy character, but don't overlook his psychic potential, because he is absolutely fantastic. Now, very quickly, his loadout. Well, he comes with a plasma pistol, and just long story short, I wouldn't bother overcharging it, because he's not a captain. He won't get rerolls on that one. If he gets that one, he's gone. So don't do it. he's got a plasma pistol, but don't overcharge it. Don't be greedy, you don't need it. He's got plenty of other damage dealing potential. It's just a nice little boost. And then his sword, as I said earlier, is strength times 2, and because he's strength 5, that makes him strength 10. It's AP minus 3 and D3 damage. One of the only real disadvantages beyond him not having an actual invuln save is the fact that his weapon is D3. If his weapon had been a flat 3, he would have just been crazy powerful. He would have been just an auto include or way more expensive. The only thing that really takes away from Mephiston is that, D3 random damage on his sword, but you can overcome that by just giving him an overwhelming number of attacks with his psychic powers. So that's the way to overcome that, but that's what makes him basically the value that he is, because otherwise he'd just be ridiculous. Now finally, in terms of loadout, we'll be talking about his warlord trait. Now his warlord trait is sort of very good, but if you aren't clever with it, very rubbish. Because what he has is speed of the Primarch, and what that effectively allows him to do is always strike first in combat, even if he didn't charge, but if the enemy charged, they get to strike first because it'll be their turn, and then you get to strike second. So what that effectively is a free interrupt that only Mephiston can use. So, an interrupt costs 2 command points, and, with Blood Angels, getting that sort of free usage of command points is really good if used correctly, because Mephiston getting to interrupt, the enemy will strike first, and then because they've charged with units, and then he can strike first, he can strike immediately after their first unit, means that he's going to be almost definitely getting some damage into whatever unit he's fighting in the wider sort of assault phase. But the disadvantage is, of course, the enemy, because it's their turn if they charged, if they want to kill Mephiston, if the main objective of their assault phase is to kill Mephiston, and they're clever about it, they will be able to, because if they, maybe they charge just Mephiston, or maybe they charge multiple units, or maybe some of their units are tied up in combat, but the main objective of their assault is they've shot at Mephiston a little bit, and now they're going to charge some attack character into Mephiston. They will get that first assault of the assault phase, the very first one, because it's their turn. It starts with the person whose turn it is, and they'll hit Mephiston with everything they've got and kill him, and that's something you can't do anything about if they decide to do that. So that is why it is not a very good warlord trait. But on the other hand, if played correctly, which I'll tell you now, you can overcome this advantage, and the way you do that is, as I always say, you need to be doing simultaneous charges. So what you need to put your opponent in the position where, they really want to kill Mephiston, but he can't be the sole objective of their assault phase. So what you would do is, say in that case where they have, it's looking like sort of the layout of the battlefield, the lay of the land is looking like all probability, it's your turn, you've charged in with Sanguinary Guard, Mephiston, and let's say a Dreadnought or something like that, or you've dropped some Assault Termies in somewhere else, or some Death Company. So you've hit them across the board, but it's looking like, from the positioning of your units, enemy units, that Mephiston's probably going to get some kind of attacky character counter-assaulting him, which, you should be able to spot a mile off if that's the case. Well, what you want to do is you want to kind of almost divert attention away from Mephiston. So if that's the case, you want to say, right, okay, I don't want Mephiston to die, I want to use him in the long term. So what I'm going to do is, on this occasion, I'm going to cast Unleash Rage on my Sanguinary Guard, and I'm going to do a Blood Boil, so Mephiston isn't, and then I'll, just make him attack a bit better or something like that, or, maybe even wings him out of the way if you rip it, and go charge something else somewhere else on the battlefield if you've misplaced him accidentally, or you need to make a jump from where you've initially deployed him out of a Storm Raven and jump miles away from the Storm Raven, something I'll discuss later. But you at that point, what you need to do is basically dilute Mephiston's power a little bit, use his psychic powers to buff your other assault units, make your other assault units equally dangerous or more dangerous in the opponent's eyes. Not necessarily more dangerous than Mephiston, but something where Mephiston isn't the sole focus of their assault phase. And that way, say they'll go, right, I'll charge my, he'll charge his assault unit into one of your assault units, say Sanguinary Guard, and then one of his characters into Mephiston, and he'll think, right, those Sanguinary Guard with their sanguine blades and axes are really going to chop up my assault unit if my opponent spends 2 command points to interrupt. So they start thinking, right, Mephiston will go first, straight after my first assault, but I don't want those Sangard to interrupt me either, and actually my character has an invuln save, and my unit that are fighting those Sangard don't. So they choose to fight with their elite counter-assault infantry first against your Sangard. Yeah, they damage some of your Sangard, kill a couple of them, but then you strike first with Mephiston and you butcher their character and save yourself. So, do you see what I mean there? What you've got to do is make it so that you put your opponent in a position where they're sort of really torn between doing what they want to do, which is strike Mephiston first, the only real way they're going to kill him, and holding off the rest of your units from, wiping out their other units, because you've got so many high damage dealing units as a Blood Angel's character. So that's how you stop. That's how you make Speed of the Primarch awesome, because then what you're doing is effectively getting a free interrupt from Mephiston, and if you don't use that, you can interrupt with one of your Sangard units instead, or something else. So we have discussed is Loadout, which you would think was a very short discussion, but actually has a lot of detail to it because there's a lot of tactical flexibility to what he comes with, and we've discussed what he can do. So now what we'll do is we'll discuss a few very specific tactics regarding how to use Mephiston, so how to deliver him, what units to combine him with, and sort of how you should be using him, what set plays and that kind of thing you should use with Mephiston to massacre your opponent and win your games. So first of all, I'll discuss how to deliver Mephiston into battle. Now basically you're going to do this in one of 2 ways if you want to sort of use him most effectively. The first way is you'll put him in a Storm Raven with 5 Sanguinary Guard, and I'll discuss why he combines with these 2 units so effectively. Now the Sanguinary Guard get rerolls to hit if they are within 6 inches of your Warlord. Now this involves you making Mephiston your Warlord, and you're putting him in the thick of it, so you are increasing the likelihood that your opponent will get a point for killing your Warlord, but in many ways the amount of damage dealing potential you will get in return for that sacrifice, if you almost just say, yeah, you know what, I'm going to lose Warlord because he's really going to go for Mephiston, because he's even more, I get a point for killing him as well as getting rid of Mephiston, which is a bonus in itself. If you just accept that you're going to lose that point and play around it, then you don't care, and that buff is a massive buff. So you're going to combine them with 5 Sangard, and you're going to put them in a Storm Raven. And a lot of the time I actually include a Dreadnought on the back of that, because for 145 points you can get a Furious or Dreadnought, just really cheap loadout, which is just the 2 Blood Talons or 2 Fists, whatever you prefer. But that gives you effectively 3 killy units that are going to be in their lines with guaranteed charges, because if you fly that Storm Raven up really close in your first turn right into the centre of their lines, even if they just scatter their forces away from your Storm Raven, you've still got a 9-inch deployment from that Storm Raven, and you will be able to chase after their units. And if you fly it into the middle of their forces and they really do try and escape the contents because they're like, wow, there's a lot of close combat killing potential in there, and they will effectively have to move their units, split them, and you'll split a wedge, put a wedge into their forces, into their lines, which means then you can send in the next turn all of your units one way or the other way and just cut their army up in bite-sized chunks with your assault units and just tear them apart. So if they pull away, great, it doesn't matter. And if they don't pull away, because you haven't deep struck in, you can place your units often an inch away from your opponent's units. You know, there's many times when I've flown a Storm Raven in with a cheap Dreadnought, 5 Sand Guard, and Mephiston, and just put all 3 of those close combat units within an inch of an enemy unit when I've placed them on the battlefield ready to assault. You're going to place them within 7 inches. You're just going to get those charges off. And when you combine that with, say, a unit of Death Company that have deep struck in, and you spend 2 command points to give them a 3d6 charge, you're effectively assaulting 4 enemy units with 4 of your close combat units, all in the second turn, and that can get you a long way towards tabling an opponent. In my most recent Warlords tournament that I attended, in the first game I played against Imperial Guard, allied with Dark Angels, and it was a really nice Imperial Soups sort of list, really powerful, and he had a one of the big Bane Blades. I think it was the Storm Shield or something like that with a big cannon. I can't remember the name exactly, but after my second turn, because of the way I'd placed my units and the units that I'd selected with my Sand Guard, Mephiston, and my Dreadnought and my Death Company unit that I'd deep struck in, and I'd spent 2 command points to get another simultaneous charge 3d6, I'd wiped out 4 of his units and actually tabled that opponent in 3 turns, and it was a proper list. He was absolutely shocked because you just couldn't avoid it, couldn't stop it. So even though that investment comes to about 850 points in total, it's a big chunk of your list, and it will be basically the assault contingent of your army. It is an absolute shock tactic unit that will just absolutely tear apart the enemy. If they split their units in 2, effectively splitting their army, you just pick half their army, and your half, those 4 units in close combat will just tear that half of the army apart, and they'll be left with 1,000 or so points left on the battlefield. Because obviously you've still got your shooting and that kind of thing. You will just destroy units really effectively. So you combine them with the Storm Raven, you combine them with the Sand Guard. If you can keep the Sand Guard and Mephiston nearby each other, the Sand Guard can protect Mephiston somewhat. He can give them an invuln save if they're going to take a lot of like AP -4 stuff. If say you're going to be facing knights and that kind of thing, he can give them that 5-up invuln and then hide behind them so he can't be targeted, or give himself a 5-up invuln. So really effective even against knights and that kind of thing. And Mephiston, if he gets quickening off, he's got 7 attacks, and then you buff your Sand Guard and give them an extra attack each. You're going to be getting, Mephiston will reliably put about, in my experience, 8 wounds on a knight in 1 round of combat, and often worth spending 3 command points to strike again and just do 16 wounds to a knight, and that's reliably. If he gets quickening off, he'll reliably do about 8 wounds per round of combat with a knight. So strike twice, 16 wounds on a knight. If you've shot at it with your last cannons and that kind of thing, and you're hitting it with a Sand Guard unit as well, yeah, you're going to get the crap stomped out of you, but there's a good chance you might actually blow up that knight if you're picking on it after it's already been weakened. So just they can take on that combination of units can absolutely destroy anything. So that's sort of what you're going to do. You're going to use Mephiston as a sort of proxy chaplain in many ways. So the Sand Guard are re-rolling. You're going to potentially give them extra attacks. You're going to give him extra attacks. You're going to have a Dreadnought in there, and the Dreadnought works really nicely because he's the cheapest of those units. So I think he may be a point more expensive than the Sand Guard potentially, but he, we all know how Dreadnoughts work. But when in combination with these other units, he's often seen as the softer target, and the enemy, in their desperation to reduce the amount of units that are just purely hitting them in your next turn, will often fire a lot at the Dreadnoughts. You sort of get 1 round of combat out of your Dreadnought, maybe tear apart 4 power armor models, or punch a tank to death or a transport to death, something like that. And then they will, in their turn, think, right, well, I've got these Sand Guards, I've got this Mephiston to shoot, and I've got this Dreadnought to shoot, and there's still a Storm Raven on 3 or 4 wounds that I didn't quite manage to kill last turn. Still got all these blooming Land Raiders and Predators in the backfield shooting at me and that kind of thing. The easiest way to reduce the amount of close combat hitting me next turn, this is your opponent's thoughts, is to kill that Dreadnought. But the Dreadnought takes a lot of like plasma and that kind of thing to kill him. because small arms won't affect him. And so your opponent will end up shooting their plasma, las cannons, that kind of thing, at your Dreadnought, potentially blowing him up, but then only having small arms to finish off Mephiston and Sandguard. And with their 2-up armor save and Mephiston's 5-up feel no pain, you will basically absorb that small arms fire and go on to fight again. So that is like the tactics and the way you should be using and synergizing those 3 units together to just really tear whole chunks of your opponent's army apart every turn. You can realistically destroy 3 to 4 units with that, plus a unit of Death Company or Terminators deep striking in, and then they'll manage to kill maybe your Dreadnought, weaken your other assault units a little bit, then you'll probably destroy another 3 units. You can realistically fully wipe out 7, 8 units by turn 3 with that combination. It is ridiculously powerful. It takes a bit of practice to really get good at synergizing the different units, but it is absolutely game changing. It's ridiculous. Now, a couple of other very specific things that I've mentioned and I'll just flesh out a little bit, but I won't go into too much more detail on. So the specific bits and bobs that you can do with Mephiston as an individual, sort of in the early game and in the late game. So in the early game, what you want to be doing is sort of hunting down characters. So your Sandguard will chop up their elite infantry, and your Dreadnought will go against a tank or something like that. So you're killing a wide range of forces. Mephiston will go for your opponent's characters, because if you can cast wings, you can drop out 9 inches from a Stormraven, and even if the Stormraven gets destroyed, you will use wings, so you can move 15 inches from where Mephiston originally, where if you charge your Stormraven in and it gets blown up, Mephiston still has a 15-inch threat range from there, and also plus his charge, which with buffs and that kind of thing means that even if the Stormraven gets blown up, he's still attacking units over 20 inches away, guaranteed charges, which means he can't be escaped. You cannot escape Mephiston. If you want to kill something with Mephiston and it's within his damage dealing potential, it's not just like a blooming massive Castellan knight and it's just Mephiston. If you want to go against a reasonable target with Mephiston and you want to target that unit, you can get that unit, you can hunt it down, you can pounce and destroy it. So jumping around, taking on any character that you want to take on is really effective. And the characters that you really want to be focusing on is, if they're a psychic heavy army, the enemy psychers, and even if they're not a psychic enemy army, you want to wipe out the enemy psychers early on, because the second that they can no longer deny powers, and I've remembered the term, the second they can no longer deny powers, Mephiston becomes an unstoppable powerhouse. So that is your sort of, by turn 3 to 4, you want to have killed all of the enemy psychers. Now, to deny, or have driven them away to the point where they don't want to be within deny range of Mephiston, because if they're within deny range of Mephiston, Mephiston can get them. Because if they're within deny range of Mephiston, if they're within 24 inches of Mephiston in their turn to deny his psychic powers, he can cast Quickening on himself to give himself an extra 3 to charge rolls, and his extra attacks, you're always going to be going for Quickening. And you go for Wings of Sanguinius. So you move from 12, and then you have effectively a 10-inch charge. 2d6, I'll add up to 7, plus 3 inches, 10-inch charge with a reroll. So you're looking at a 22-inch. You will almost guarantee to get that Psyker. They've got like a little 2-inch window between 22 and 24 inches where they're a little bit safer, but still not safe. With a command point, you will get more than a 10-inch charge. You will get that 20. You will have a 24-inch threat range. So, and you can even spend 2 command points to give him 3d6 on his charge. So if you really want to kill an enemy psyker that's 24 inches away, you can spend 2 command points to give yourself a 3d6 charge, wings over there, speed of the quickening on him, and just tear that psyker apart. So you've also got your blood boils. You've also got your smites. So you're going to jump out of that Stormraven and you're going to tear apart any enemy psychers. And enemy psychers, unless it's like a demon prince, they're generally not going to be that good in combat. So you may not not going to really need to use Unleash Rage as well on Mephiston. And if they manage to block Quickening and don't give you those D3 extra attacks, just giving him that one extra attack with Unleash Rage will allow him to just tear apart basically any enemy Psyker. What if my opponent's got loads of enemy Psykers on jet bikes, Farseers on jet bikes, I hear you say? Well, again, Mephiston will just wings after them and chop them up, and a Farseer on a jet bike is just not going to survive against Mephiston. If he gets 5 attacks, or even if he's just got 4 attacks, their toughness 3, he's just going to destroy them. Not a problem at all. And he's way too tough for them to kill. So he's just going to absolutely, up to turn 4, tear apart the enemy Psykers, so that in turn 5, or by turn 4 you want to have completed that, so by turn 4, turn 5, and into the late game, because usually it goes on to turn 6, if not turn 7, you will then have a killing machine left on the field, still a couple of wounds on him, still got a 2-up armor save, that's not gone anywhere, wingsing around, they can't stop him casting, it's just down to your dice rolls, and you'll just fly around, and at that point you want to just start basically using him to support your other units, and killing off anything that basically is a threat to your remaining units. So say you want to take, you'll use him to either stop them killing your units on an objective, or killing their units on an objective very efficiently, so you can guarantee that you will take that objective. So you look around the battlefield around turn 4, you've killed off their Psykers, and you go, right, there's an enemy unit over there that's got a decent amount of firepower in range of that objective that I'm holding, and I don't want to lose that objective because I can't reinforce it, or I don't want to invest more units into it because I've got other fish to fry, I've got other objectives I want to take. So you wings Mephiston over there, and you butcher that high damage unit and protect your objective. You've basically, although Mephiston isn't a buff character, he has supported that unit by killing off the threat to them, and whatever is a threat to that unit, he will be able to get to it because he's so fast, and whenever he gets there, he'll destroy it because he's so powerful. Alternatively, you will see an objective that your opponent is holding with any number, even a tank could be sat on that objective, just holding it, and you can't get any obsec units over to it, so that tank's a reliable holder of that backline objective. Wings Mephiston over, blow it up, they're not holding the objective, they lose 3 points. And even if you can't take it, they lose 3 points. If you've got some assault marines with jetpacks nearby, Mephiston can run over, destroy that unit that the assault marines couldn't take on with themselves, and they can just jetpack over to that objective and take it themselves. Or Mephiston, if it's the last turn of the game, can just sit on the objective and hold it himself if they can't reinforce it, and if there's no offset units nearby. So he can totally clear an objective, if not steal an objective. And in the midfield, or if you've got an objective that you want to take with one of your other units, or you've got some offset units, just like 5 TAC Marines, they're not particularly tough, high damage, or well armed, or anything like that. You can just, Mephiston can hop on to the enemy objective, chop up the units on that objective, and then you move your cheap TAC Marines onto that objective and take it. So that's basically the intricacies of what you want to be doing with Mephiston on the battlefield, play by play each turn. 1 to 3, take out the enemy Psykers, and if you've killed off the Psykers very quickly, take down any buff units, any support characters, or any combat characters that could threaten Mephiston later on, but if he gets the charge off, he'll kill them. Go for them. Then turns 4, 5 and onwards, you are clearing objectives and taking on threats to your objectives, like long range damage dealing enemy units. So that is absolutely everything that you need to know to take Mephiston from, a decent value unit in the Blood Angels Codex to an absolutely unstoppable killing machine. Mephiston, Chief Librarian, Lord of Death, and favourite of the Blood Angels, chosen sons of Sanguinius. Thank you very much for your time. This has been the Schola Progenium. Goodbye.